When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
What's the easiest choice you can make? Window instead of middle seat? Picking a vendor who sends a great gift basket? Outsourcing business tasks you hate? What about selling with Shopify? Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit a million orders stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try. Go to shopify.com/try now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/try.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
You have my sword.
And you have my bow.
And my trowel. Hi, you're listening to episode 19 of And My Trowel, where we look at the fantastic side of archaeology and the archaeological side of fantasy. I'm Ash.
And I'm Tilly.
And today, we're going to be looking at the most important building in all fantasy, where the worlds are built and collide, where our heroes often enjoy a thirst-quenching, end-of-quest mug of mead, the Tavern.
Wait, hang on. Are you telling me our quest this week actually starts within a tavern?
Yeah, well, remember after the vampire burial we did, and we kind of fancied ourselves a pint?
Yeah.
And you know how we sort of crashed the Butterbur Bree Historical Society karaoke night at the Prancing Pony?
How can I forget? I've never heard an orc hit such a high note before.
Okay, well, when you and Jess were singing Misty Mountains and all that, I might have drunkenly volunteered us to help the barkeep with a little archaeological problem.
Oh, Ash, why? We've already got a magic mirror to figure out, a curse to break, those angry wizards portaling us, cease and desist notices every hour. We don't have time for a historic building survey.
I know, right? But just hear me out, okay? So the Butterbur Bree Historical Society, they've been fighting for an actual age, to get this tavern historically listed. And we could help them, okay? Just think of the history, the archaeology, the cool frosty pints after work.
Ugh, fine. As long as they serve tea as well. So, what do we have to do then?
Okay, well, I really didn't think that far. But they did send me a brief. So they asked us for a detailed record to display the historical and archaeological importance of the site. So basically, they want some concrete evidence, book, to take to the town council in order to grant a listed building consent and permission. So we're really need to think about how we're going to go about this. But first, Tilly, I want to know, what do you know of taverns?
Well, I mean, I guess a tavern, to me, it's sort of the oldie worldy name for a pub, basically, which I feel is also a very British thing. I only realized this kind of when I moved around in lots of other places, and then you sort of think, actually, yeah, pub culture, and not even just the drinking, but you go to the pub for your lunch, or, you go to the pub for quiz night, or you go for the pub for the karaoke night, like we did the other night with the orcs. And it's sort of, I don't know, it's just such a stable part. People also always tell me, they're like, oh, British food is so awful. And I'm like, don't say that until you've gone to a pub.
Yeah, you have to go to a pub.
Had pub food. Pub food is the chef's kiss of British food. Those
big chunky chips.
Oh yes, and the pies. Oh, what's your favourite pub food?
Oh gosh. Yeah, it has to be, when I could eat gluten, probably a good pie, like a mince pie, some chips, and peas on the side. Something like that. Yeah.
Oh no, for me it was Sunday roast.
Oh,
roast
like
beef,
a carvery.
Yorkshire pudding with like thick gravy and roast potatoes and carrots and peas, followed down by a sticky toffee pudding.
Oh my God, I love sticky toffee pudding. Funny, I have this is a total aside, but I think it's an absolutely hilarious story. my partner one Christmas was really, really drunk, and his sister makes lots of sticky toffee pudding. She's a baker, and she gave them a sticky toffee pudding without the toffee, and then he picked up a jar which he thought was toffee and put it on and ate the whole thing. And then she was like, oh, I forgot to bring the sticky toffee pudding, like the toffee out. And he was like, what was that? And then we realised it was gravy.
Oh.
And he'd ate all the gravy. He was like, it still tasted good. I did think it tasted a bit weird, but
that's like that episode. Have you seen that episode of Friends where Rachel makes the trifle or something, but then the pages of the recipe book have stuck together, so she makes half trifle and half shepherd's pie. She's like, so it's like, well, this is the cream, this is the fruit, this is the mince and mashed potatoes. Yeah, and Joey's there going, what's not to like? Like cake, good, meat, good.
Yeah, it's good. But that's what he said. He was like, it was all going to go to the same place. Didn't matter. It was really nice. So like, he was like fine about it. But yeah, everyone was like, oh my God. It was so funny.
Oh, no. Well, so anyway, we were going back. Sorry.
Yes, but you've actually stumbled onto a bit of a debate. Okay, you said pub.
Okay.
All right. So there's the tavern versus inn versus pub debate.
Oh, okay.
So general rule. Okay. Pubs only for drinks.
Oh.
Right. This is in the medieval period as well, right? So
Okay.
pub only for drinks. A tavern is for drinks and food. Right. And an inn is for drinks, food, and accommodation.
I see. Okay.
So medieval taverns, especially in the 14th and 15th centuries, and mostly in England and Scotland, and I am talking about the UK, unfortunately. I think also in Paris, they have this kind of tavern tradition too. Oh, and Germany, obviously.
Yeah, it's true. They had a lot of taverns in Germany.
Yes. So some parts of Europe have this tradition where you'd likely find in a tavern, it would be less wholesome pastimes. Okay. So you'd go there specifically for like ale drinking, gambling, singing, revelry, and a bit of debauchery on the side.
Lovely, lovely.
Yeah. Some of them are even associated with wine smuggling. So it's funny because in fantasy, you think about taverns, you think of like ale, right?
Yeah.
And you think of mead. Well, actually, a lot of taverns started to do wine, and they were predominantly wine, especially in Paris, because there was such high taxes in the 16th century that they started to try and like smuggle wine in. And so they kind of got around the whole tax situation through taverns. But they were also served as restaurants. And you see that in 18th century Paris, and then the restaurant becomes a thing.
Oh wow! So
Yeah.
so the fine French Parisian restaurants actually emerged from ale drinking, gambling, bit of debauchery.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, but then you have inns as well, right? Which you would go for a more finer establishment. So I read a little Tudor source that said basically no self-respecting man would find himself in a tavern.
I see.
He would go to an inn. He would otherwise his reputation would be in tatters.
But were they still like called, because you have all the great, you know, the classic, right, pub names or tavern names or inn names or whatever. So, I mean, would they have differentiated? Would you be able to tell from the outside whether it was a pub or a tavern or an inn? Or would they still look the same?
Point. I think the name tells you because
it would say what it was, yeah.
So for us, we're looking at the Prancing Pony, right? Mm-hmm. And when I went through Lord of the Rings and I had a little look at all the stuff that it's obviously an inn because it says Prancing Pony Inn.
Yes.
But it's,
and they have accommodation.
It's also, they have accommodation. You can sleep there, but it's finer. So the food's really nice. So basically they thought that taverns would have really subpar food.
I see.
Yeah. So you can kind of tell from where it is.
Right.
And who's going in and out.
Got it. Yeah. So you have watched a little while. So actually, now if I'm suggesting to people when they say to me, oh, British food is awful, I shouldn't say, oh, go to a pub because that's just drinks. I should say you should go to an inn as that is the finest establishment.
Tilly. There's a little bit more to it than that. So basically, I went into a big deep dive about pubs as well. But so if you had an inn, it would be kind of the urban elite community. And that would be like, if you had an inn in your town was booming. That seems to be the idea. But then that tends to change. So taverns then obtain licenses for accommodation, and people generally start to stay there either because they've, drank too much and can't leave
for some weird reason.
Yeah, but then, or they decide actually this is probably a good revenue and it's a good idea that we can try and get a license for accommodation. So you have the like rooms above. Yeah, so they start to do board, but then you kind of get this overlap in the medieval period where they all start to amalgamate into public houses, and that's where you get pubs from.
That's what pubs are. I see. Oh, and so that's why, I mean, it is a shame, right? It would be much more fun to say after a hard day of work, oh, well, so tavern?
Tavern, let's go.
Let's go to the tavern.
Exactly. But what do you think about in like fantasy? So can you think of any fantasy taverns and what they kind of like look like?
I mean, it's a classic. Well, you mentioned the Prancing Pony already. I guess that, even though, as you say, it's an inn, not a tavern. So
it's an inn, not a tavern.
But it's sort of, I guess, it's always the place where you kind of rest up after a long quest, or it's the place where you go to find information. So, like, if you need to kind of gain interesting, I don't know. Yeah, gain insight or all of these sort of things. You'll usually go to the tavern, and sort of the barman or the innkeeper or the tavern keeper or pub owner or whatever you want to call them, landlord, is probably the most knowledgeable person in town, I guess, about all of the people living in town. So yeah, that's what I would say would be the kind of classic tavern.
Yeah, I think you've got it right. That's exactly it. So if you think about like fantasy is often in an ancient or medieval setting, right?
Yeah.
You don't have necessarily, unless it's like sci-fi fantasy, but we're thinking like hardcore high fantasy.
Yes.
It's either they're traveling on foot and they're on an adventure, right? So they're on foot, horseback, sometimes even like dragonback. And so that means that taverns fit really well into the story. So they need to stay or rest somewhere. So it would be an inn, or they go for an ale, or they go to a tavern and they stop. And so taverns offer a space for people in our world and also in the fantasy world, where it's a perfect setting for like a few mysterious developments, an introduction of a different character like Strider. He's in the tavern, sitting there with his big pipe, and then plot twists as well.
True.
So that, and it kind of evokes that sense. So like they're dimly lit, they're cozy, they've got a roaring fire. They're really perfect for that cloaked kind of stranger coming in and stirring things up a bit.
Yeah, I guess they can either be like cozy or like ominous. It's sort of depending on which kind of fantasy, because sometimes, it's like the stranger comes in and everyone looks at him, or something, and it's walking into somewhere as a stranger, or you're walking in and you'll be welcomed. I guess it's the kind of two.
And that's interesting because like with the Prancing Pony, when you're reading Tolkien, you can see it's actually quite a nice place because of the way that people interact with each other. So there's some, descriptions about how it's, got a babel of voices and clouds of smoke and stuff. But all the time they're singing merry songs and they're cheerfully talking to each other. And I think when Frodo walks in, there's some other people who go, oh, well, my last name's Underhill, because that's his, disguise. Yes. And they're like, oh, you're like a distant cousin. Yay. So it's that kind of like, you can imagine them sing-songing along with big tankards and stuff. And then you've kind of got the scary bit. Well, so scary. Mysterious bit where you've got Strider in the corner. And he can be cloaked, and even though it's really warm in there, and he's got his big hood up and stuff. So they're kind of both, aren't they?
And I guess, like in The Witcher as well, you always, isn't that the opening scene of the first Witcher book? You have him going into a tavern pub. Or tavern. And it's sort of, they're all looking at him, and then they all, the three burly men come up behind him and say, oh, we don't like your type here, or whatever. And it's the kind of...
That was a brilliant accent.
Right? What was that? Who knew The Witcher was based in Somerset? Sorry, it's the first one I could think of.
Just great.
But, it's that kind of...
Even that voice fits with the kind of innkeeper character as well, right? Yeah. Because if you think of an innkeeper, he's probably wearing an apron, he's probably a bit sweaty, a bit red in the face, he's probably balding, running around, doing all the things that he needs to do. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
But there's also a few other taverns that I thought I'd give some mentions to. So there's a Waystone Inn, which is the Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss.
Oh, okay.
There's the Elf Song Tavern in the D&D games, Dungeons and Dragons. Wheel of Time has like unreal amount of
Loads
taverns.
of taverns, yeah. That's true.
Yeah. Actually, my partner gave me one, and I totally didn't think of this one. Shrek, the Poison Apple.
The Poison Apple! Oh my god, that's such a good one.
Yeah, I didn't
With
think
Captain
of that
Hook
one
playing
at
the
all.
piano.
Yeah, and it's got like the bartender and everything. And
Snow White. No, who is it? The Ugly Stepsister.
The Ugly Stepsister, which I think in the UK is voiced by Jonathan Ross or one of the brothers or something.
Oh my
like
gosh, is it? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So yeah, and then interestingly, which I just thought I'd put a little fact in, is that the new game Baldur's Gate 3, your custom character that you click on comes with the name Tav as a nod to taverns.
Oh, very nice. You know where else there are taverns? In what other fantasy universe?
Oh yes, I was waiting for that.
Of course I'm going to mention it. But actually it is. It's one of, I think, the best in the series. Is called Monstrous Regiment. And the whole point of it is because this girl, Polly, wants to save her inn, which is called the Duchess. And so she goes off and pretends to be a boy and joins the army. In order to
story.
fight and save the inn. So and it's all about indeed sort of the culture of innkeeping and how that goes. That's sort of the introduction to it. So would recommend. It's a very good one.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I was also going to mention, well, I thought about Legends and Lattes, but then I was like, that's a coffee shop. But it's very similar.
Prequel, I guess, the bookshops and Bone Dust. That one does have a tavern.
There you go. So you kind of have to have it. It's part of it. So, but all this tavern talk is making me hungry. Could you go for second breakfast, Tilly?
Absolutely. I think they might even have a kind of roast beef special on the menu, which, you can sort of have. Roast beef sandwich. There you go. Oh, that's second breakfast, right?
That's a good one. Okay. We're going to take a break here and return once our bellies are all full. Welcome back. Who knew that the Prancing Pony had a gluten-free menu? Anyway, I'm ready to look into the practicalities of our quest. But how do we do that? Because I don't really know. About it. But just to give you a quick recap of our brief, the Butterbur Bree Historical Society have asked us to help preserve and make a detailed record of the Prancing Pony Inn, and then the historical and archaeological importance of the site, so they can persuade the Bree Town Council to give them a listed building status. I couldn't say that there.
Listed building status.
Say that 3 times when you're drunk. Which is apparently something that hasn't actually really been done in Middle Earth before. So, especially not for a tavern or inn. So it's really important that we do this. So for this quest, I think that we have to dig in and become a little bit more practical when we're thinking about archaeology, because we will need to record this building. How do you think we can do that, though?
Well, full disclosure, I have never, I think, done anything to do with like archaeology of buildings. I know that's a massive part of archaeology, like so many people. Mm-hmm. I have always found it really fascinating. Like I really love looking at buildings that have clearly been, what's the word? Like, what's the word? When you, what's the word, Ash? Come on.
I'm genuinely like, I'm not too sure. Like repurposed?
Sort of, yeah, repurposed, but like fixed, renovated.
Oh, restored.
Restored, exactly, yeah. That kind of thing.
That was hard to get to.
I mean, you weren't far off, actually. As if you can't read my mind, Ash, honestly.
Oh, wait, sorry. I'll just turn that back on, that function.
Check the settings. Yeah. But, so, because I really like when you see, those ones where like you have the boarded up window, the bricked up windows, or you have a different style of bricks in one part, or like old churches and things, where you can then see, oh, so this was where there was an extended bit here. And then you always learn a little bit about my favorite story is in Leiden, where I lived for a while and where I studied and did my master's. And I used to do the boat tours through the canals whenever I had a friend come to visit. Nice. And I did them so many times that I knew most of the stories about like that they told, it was like a historic tour. because they didn't always have time to tell all the stories, if they missed any, I'd be like whispering to my friend, like, by the way, this is also a thing. So I really enjoyed the tour. It was a really good tour. But there was one, they used to have like these tall houses. I mean, you can picture like the Dutch houses, right? The sort of tall, all right next to each other alongside the canal. And so you can see a little bit of the front of the roof, but the majority of the roof you can't see from the front street. So they'd use the most expensive tiles, which were black, I believe. I can't remember now which way round it was. Basically, it was either the expensive tiles were black and the cheap ones were red, or vice versa. And so they'd use the expensive ones on the front, but then all the rest of the tiles would be the other like color, which you could see if you were higher up. So yeah, I thought that was quite funny. Anyway, that's not really related to what we're talking about.
That is funny though, because you'd put the best facade first, wouldn't you?
Exactly.
You want everyone to see that and be like, look how rich they are.
Look how rich I am, and then the rest are made from like paper.
Yeah. it's just cardboard. It's like those fake houses down in London, isn't it?
Those fake houses?
Yeah, it's like those houses in London, the Leinster Gardens.
Oh, okay.
And they're just basically like some of them don't even exist. There's just nothing behind them. There's just they're just the facade. Because
I have heard about them actually. I think I heard about them in the. I think they're mentioned in the Rivers of London book, or possibly one of that series. So they're just like, because there's a tram line, the tube goes behind them. Yes, that's it. Yeah,
and they just wanted to keep the facades to match like the neighborhood. So there's just like no one lives there. Just these like Corinthian columned fancy houses,
which is always funny. Well, and there's the classic, right, of if there was window tax at some point, so that's why they bricked up all the windows at some point.
Yeah, I love that one.
You can,
Yeah, you're right about the stones though. And I think that's still part of conservation, is that they'll use a similar but different stone, so you can tell which is different and what's different time periods and what's a restoration and what's not.
I like that actually. I was going to ask your opinion on that, because I remember, I think it's something like the Colosseum or something, like a really big, important historic building, and they restored part of it, and they used very obviously modern blocks to do it. And a lot of people were like, oh my goodness, how could you do that to this historical building? But I actually really like that, because like you say, it shows the difference. And I mean, now we might be like, oh God, this is horrendous. It's a horrible modern block of stone. But actually in 100, 200,000 years or whatever, it will be a really nice way for future archaeologists to be able to date when things happened.
Make our job easier.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
definitely. But yeah, I quite like having that. Yeah. So it's
it also blends the present with the past and stuff. And a lot of these buildings, not necessarily the Colosseum, but like a lot of these buildings would not be there if it wasn't for someone taking them on and renovating them and living in them and stuff. So yeah, I think why not?
Yeah.
Go for it. But it does sound like maybe we have an idea of what we need to do here.
Mm-hmm. So I guess some kind of historic building survey, but how would we even go about doing a historic building survey? What is it?
Well, I have a definition.
Oh, how convenient.
How convenient. I just picked it out of my archaeology brain. So a historic building survey is undertaken as part of a planning process, actually.
Okay.
So we don't have a planning process yet for the Prancing Pony, but it is in order to preserve a record of the layout, the chronology, and the surroundings of the building, and to inform any strategy for conservation, alteration, demolition of the structure and its setting.
Okay. So like we were just saying, see how it has sort of developed over time, any additions that might have been made to it, or like anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. And you can do different like types or different, I was going to say strengths, but that's not, the different levels of recording.
Yeah. Say strengths.
Yeah, it's like different
I want to
grade.
Well, they are called grades, right? Like they can grade 3 listed or whatever. Like it's, all those things.
Yeah, they are. So you can do it up to different types of recording that you want. So it depends on the importance and what you think the importance is of the building. And so basically it's like kind of, you're drawing, you're measuring, your plan, your profiles, your elevation. And I was thinking about this. I was like, can we take photographs in Middle Earth? Would we be able to do that?
I mean, otherwise, what would we do? Otherwise, we'd have to commission a portrait, like a painting, which... Yeah,
we'd still have like our own plans and profiles and elevations of each side of the building.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'd have to get someone to come with us to draw
everything.
general views and stuff. Yeah.
Which, I mean, there's some beautiful drawings of architecture in Middle Earth, so we can probably find the artists who created that.
Yeah.
We can ask them
I don't know
assistance.
how big the budget is for the Prancing Pony.
I mean, I'm sure they'd be happy to come and just do it, you know, for free, for the good of the public good, you know. It's worth asking. You never know.
Definitely worth it. I think so. Why not?
Alan, what's his name? Alan Lee? I can't remember now the name of the artist. I'm going to look it up. Yeah, Alan Lee.
We'll get Alan Lee.
Yeah, he'll come. He'll definitely come.
And he'll do it for us.
Thanks, Alan, if you're listening. And I mean, also, if we're talking about like modern our world versus fantasy world, because you mentioned that the fact this is quite often done in order to kind of preserve something in case, and that's the whole point, right? The Butterbur, I keep wanting to say Butterbur Bree Historical Society, trying to display the sort of historical and archaeological importance in order to persuade the council. So we also need to make sure that anything that we do highlights all of those aspects, which is always a bit of an interesting. I always wonder how much, like, what if you are recording a building and then you think, oh gosh, no, this isn't actually that interesting. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this isn't, what if the results come up? Do you, I mean, obviously you don't fake anything, but do you kind of highlight certain things more than others? I mean, I feel like you would, right? You would be a little biased in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, the only time I've ever done a building survey was a farm and it was getting demolished for housing. So it was kind of like it wasn't going to be saved. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't for listed building consent. It wasn't for anything. It was a listed building and that's why we were there. But it was such a level that it was just because it was an old 18th century farmhouse that they were kind of like, we don't need this bit. Right. So we did the cow sheds and stuff like that. And that wasn't like, you know, the most important building ever, but it still deserved to be recorded. Yeah. So I think it depends. Like, it's still going to be recorded, but to what level it needs to be recorded. I think that's the thing. So something like the Prancing Pony, if it had anything that was like kind of wood that has been there for centuries or ages, you know, that's carved, anything that's really internal rooms that are, you know, of importance, who stayed there, you know, historic, if you think about it, we've had Aragon II stay there.
True. Yeah.
So in his I feel like
form. Yeah.
And the ring bearer, I feel ring
bearer's also been there. Yeah.
Yes, and wraiths,
I mean, it's pretty central.
It is.
It's culturally and historically a landmark.
Yeah, exactly. So really, we should do a very detailed analytical account. And maybe we should even talk to the patrons, because some of these patrons will have long lifespans.
True. So some of them might have even been there when, when this was.
Because according to Tolkien, people at the Prancing Pony, they're like dwarves and travellers that have moved up and down the road. So there's lots of people coming and going, not just men, hobbits and everything.
Oh, we could do like an ethnographic study as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Like as part of it, because that's part of the building. One could argue.
Yeah, and all of those different races of people have been impacted by the events that happened at the Prancing Pony. If Strider, Aragorn Strider, it's definitely Strider at that point, I feel like. Yeah. If Strider didn't meet Frodo, no. If Gandalf wasn't late in The Hobbit on every single book.
I feel like, you know, at some point, if Gandalf says he's going to meet you there, you're just going to be like, yeah, all right, Gandalf. Sure, you'll
Doesn't
be
he get
there.
like mad at the bartender for like not sending a letter or something? You're like, well, maybe just don't leave like a really important letter to some random guy.
Some bumbling bartender. It would have been a very different story, huh?
Yeah, very different story. So it wouldn't have happened. Maybe, we don't know what would have happened. Oh. Perhaps the ring wraiths got Frodo. And Strider wasn't there.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been a very short book, I feel.
It would have been over. I feel like it probably wouldn't have been.
I mean, it still wouldn't have been a short book, but it would have been a shorter book.
But we could also do stuff like 3D projections of the rooms as well. We could do some photogrammetry and things like that.
That would be very cool, yeah. Especially if they've got nice carvings and things. And
definitely.
Doing more 3D ones.
And then we could even, when they send it to the all the information, they could start to look at these processes and maybe base some sort of policy on their heritage. I mean, we've already looked at the Battle of the Ents and things like that. So the battlegrounds, maybe they could have some sort of heritage. Look, Tilly, we're changing Middle Earth.
We're just, we're trailblazing.
Yeah.
With these things. This is what Middle Earth needed. This is what the Lord of the Rings books needed. They needed
an archaeologist.
2 archaeologists coming in and saying, but what about the policy?
You can't use that sword. It's too old.
Don't you realise how old this is?
It's in 3 bits. What are you doing?
We can't restore it. Can you imagine? We should definitely do a future episode on that about conservation. We should get Jess in again to talk about the conservation of objects and talk about Narsil, the place of Narsil, and whether it was right to restore it to its original form or whether you should have left it as it was.
Absolutely.
That's a really good idea. I'm going to message her now. Well, no, I'll message her afterwards.
We're in the middle of a job here, Tilly. You can't just be messaging people out of world.
Well, we need to make sure we have, future future jobs as well.
Yeah. And, but then we can build on this. We can look at, when we were helping the kayak and stuff like that, we could even look at the environment around it. We could look how people congregate around taverns, the social aspect, community building, phenomenological, I can't even say that ever, approach.
I think that everyone says it as phenomenological. Yeah, I mean, archaeology of space and place and location is such a big concept, and not just in terms of this is our place, but like you were saying earlier, in terms of the people who interact with it, how it has developed over time, the historical and cultural importance of it. So, there's so many.
There's so much. I think we know what to do then.
It's going to be a big job, huh?
Yeah, well, I think the thing is, it'll be a good job. Okay. And, that's it, right? So say we've done it.
Yeah.
We've done it.
Finished.
We present our report to the Butterbur Bree Historical Society, and they're thrilled with the work that we've done, obviously.
Taste the thrillness already.
Yeah, every drawing that Alan's done, every record, every level that we've taken is handed over to Bree Town Council, and soon enough, they'll probably grant the Prancing Pony monument status.
Oh, lovely.
So the Historical Society and the Barkeep inform us that they've already drawn up plans for a heritage plaque, which would read TA 3018, the site of the Shire Reckoning and the infamous Ringwraith Break-In, where Aragorn II and the Bearer of the One Ring met.
That sounds good. I can see it now.
So it's one of those little blue plaques,
Yeah, right? The little, yeah.
So they soon hope that the site will be recognised not only in the town of Bree, but in all of Middle-earth too.
Oh, here's hoping. Okay, well, it's going to be a long task, but yes, I'm looking forward to that happening.
Yeah, I think so. Well, that's about it for this episode of And My Trowel. We hope you enjoyed this quest. As always, if you have any suggestions for future episodes, do get in contact via email or social media. All contact info, as well as references and further reading for all the points mentioned, can be found in our show notes. Hey, Tilly. Mm-hmm. I've been meaning to ask, you mentioned something about the magic mirror earlier on in the episode. What's that all about? I don't even remember having a magic mirror.
Oh, did I not mention it to you?
No, you didn't.
Oh. Okay, let's just have one last round and then I'll fill you in. Cheers.
Cheers.
This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV traveling the United States, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, DigTech LLC, Cultural Media, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Rachel Roden.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.